Welcome to Means of Grace, a podcast produced by the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church.
I'm Brian Mateer, the Associate Director of Missional Engagement for the Western North Carolina Conference. On today's episode of the Means of Grace podcast, I interview Executive Director Jay Cobb from Sanctuary Counseling Group. Sanctuary Counseling Group has provided mental health counseling and pastoral counseling in the greater Charlotte area and in satellite offices in cities and towns around the western Piedmont of North Carolina for over 50 years. Jay, welcome to the Means of Grace podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Well, let's just dive right in. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit, just give us maybe an overview about Sanctuary Counseling Group.
Many of your listeners may not realize how long we've been around. We've been in existence since 1965 when Reverend Glenn Lackey started the organization. It was actually back then called Charlotte District Hospitality Ministry.
Okay.
And so we've been around for a number of years. We've kind of ebbed and flowed, as you can imagine, through the decades. But we've always had a relationship with the Western North Carolina Methodist Conference. It's one of those relationships and partnerships that we value greatly. We're an unusual organization. Our model is seen very seldomly across the United States, even for faith-based organizations. We work and function as fully licensed clinicians. We all bring a spirituality to the element of counseling, regardless of where we are or what our licensing is. And then we sit in local churches. Our model is that we want to be in the communities that need us. And so we're right on the boots on the ground, right there where each of our churches are located. Not only are we serving each of those churches' congregants and the pastors in those churches, we're serving the surrounding communities and the surrounding churches as well. So it's a really great ministry for pastors. We have a large number of pastors who come to see us, and we also have a large number of referrals that come from the pastors in those churches and the surrounding churches.
Thanks for that brief overview. One of the things that you said that made me perk up was a little bit about the partnership with the UMC. Could you talk a little bit more about how that works with your churches? Because I know that you had mentioned in one of our earlier conversations about how you really feel like Sanctuary Counseling Group is not only just in the building, but also a part of the staff of some of the churches that you're a part of.
It's really the big part of what drew me to Sanctuary. So I'm second career. I spent 35 years in the insurance industry until God called me and said, "Hey, I want you to do this." and my calling was to be in a church. My calling was to sit in a congregation and then be able to minister to the people, because what I found as a lay leader in churches for decades, where so many people were resistant to get up off the pews. They felt themselves chained to the pews, so to speak, out of their brokenness and their hurt. And what they needed was somebody who could truly put the psychological element to work for them while tying in the spirituality piece of it for them. And so I really wanted to be in the church. The more I discerned God's calling, the more I understood that maybe that meant being in multiple churches, not just one church. And then to be at Sanctuary or find Sanctuary and be able to see that we're in 15 different churches in a large footprint. And now to be the executive director, God's truly blessed me and said, we're really going to be in multiple churches. And so this is really exciting for me. We are very committed to being in different communities. My board of directors is charging me with where else can we diversify? What other communities do we need to be in that we're missing opportunities in? And so what we do is we partner with churches and communities, and then we like to become a part of that congregation, a part of that church staff, so to speak. Many of our churches will list us as staff members. They will refer to us. They include us in preaching rotations, or they will include us in Bible study rotations. We will do seminars if the church wants us to. And we've also been engaged with churches in conflict resolution, whether it's dealing with staff transitions or it's dealing with complications around congregation issues.
I love that your counselors are really, kind of ingrained in the church and in the community. I think that just shows how you go more than just a kind of a counseling client relationship. It's more of that community aspect, and it feels like more of a ministry.
I feel like it is. When I took the executive director job, there was a conversation with the board of directors about me giving up my church location. And because I see clients in a congregation, in a church, in a community. And I was like, no, I'll be your executive director, but I will always, as far as I'm concerned, have a foot in a church door somewhere where I'm seeing clients there. And I think it really is powerful that now the majority of my referrals are coming from the congregation, not from the pastors, but from the confidence that they see because I'm present. I'm constantly talking about mental health. I'm constantly standing up and presenting issues. I'm going to the women's groups. I'm going to the men's groups. I'm talking about issues that are pertinent to them. And it really makes a difference when people understand better around what mental health is all about.
You talked about a variety of mental health issues. Can you share a little bit about the things that you're seeing? I know that each one of the counselors in the different locations kind of have different areas of expertise. So I wonder if you could just give the listeners a little bit of an overview of the types of things that y'all assist with.
Sure. We are licensed clinical mental health counselors. We're also licensed marriage and family therapists, and we're licensed clinical social workers and licensed pastoral counselors. And so we're able to cover the gambit of anything that anyone would need our help with. Generally, what we're seeing are more issues that are creating conflict and chaos in our normal everyday life. And so those are the typical things that we work with. That would be overwhelming anxiety, panic attacks. Depression is a major issue we're faced with right now during this pandemic. We deal with all age groups. So we have children's therapy. We have a children's play therapist on staff, and we go all the way up. Right now, I think my personal oldest client's 85. So, we cover a very large age group. We do deal with borderline personality disorders and narcissistic personality disorders. But in general, those are not the overall arching things we're faced with. We deal with relationship issues. So a lot of times we're dealing with a husband and wife who are struggling, whether they've been married short term or whether they've been married for 60 years. Sometimes people just need to come and have a place where they can talk and share what's going on and feel like there's a third party that won't take sides. We work spiritually. There are people who are struggling from a spiritual perspective. Whether it's got to do with the way they grew up or whether it's got to do with new revelations. We do talk about those kinds of things. Our goal is to offer grace and hope to each person who walks in the door right where they happen to be sitting right now. So as I tell my clients, if you can just sit with me, then I'm going to sit. If you walk, I'm going to walk. If you are ready to run, I'm going to do my level best to haul myself up and get to running with you.
Yeah, right.
So, and sometimes they catapult themselves. I'm really amazed at how often people do the work and then they catapult themselves way out in front of me and talk about having to run to catch up from session to session. that can be daunting at times.
One of the things that you and I were talking about is the LGBTQ population, and you really having a lot of folks that are wanting to talk with you about that. I would love for you to expand on that, and then maybe one other or a couple of other issues that are particularly pertinent during this time.
Yeah. We have a very diverse group of therapists. While we tend to kind of pat ourselves on the back as being generalists, because our model requires us to be in different communities and not sitting together. We do tend to be fairly generalist, but I do not see children. I've made the decision, that I really do not want to see kids under 15. There's a cognitive switch that goes on. And so there are exceptions. I've got a 14-year-old right now that is very mature, and I like working with that client. But in general, it's not for me. So being able to refer to one of my clinicians who really does a good job with children is important. We have several. There's a team of us that focus on birthing trauma, loss of a child trauma. So we work together in helping each other with clients. I may see one of my other therapists may see the couple. Somebody else may see the other children if in those situations. We have a team that focuses on abuse trauma abuse and trauma recovery. And again, we work together as a team to figure out how do we deal with those issues. We have addiction specialists. We have adolescent specialists. I always laugh and say I have two 20-something-year-old boys, and they don't listen to me. And yet I have a very large client base that's 20-something-year-old men. And, do you hear the difference? Maybe that's why my guys don't listen to me at home, because I call them boys. And I laugh at them and I say, you don't listen to me. And these other folks are coming to me and paying, and they listen to me. So we all...
Maybe you should charge them.
That's it. So it is kind of funny. But they will call me, and my kids will call me and they go, hey, Dad, I want the counselor voice. And so evidently I have a counselor voice that I don't realize. The funny thing is that my wife will look at me. She goes, don't put that counselor voice on me. So that's always funny around my household. So we all bring something different. And I do think it's important for, those listening to understand, because of our licensing, because of our calling, we don't discriminate against anyone. We're not looking to make an opinion or a judgment about anyone's lifestyle or sexuality. And so we do find ourselves being with a lot of LGBTQ folks because we're safe, because we're able to listen to them, especially those who are coming out of Christian homes, those who are coming out of Christian backgrounds. They are bringing that with them into session, and they're wanting to talk about it. And it's important that they have a safe place to talk about it and process it and figure out what that means. And so we're trying to give those folks an opportunity to be able to resolve a lot of issues they're faced with in their lives. We don't make decisions. We're not telling them what to do. Our licenses won't allow us to do that. But we do accept them for where they are in their process. And so we're seeing more and more. I, for some reason, seem to be getting a lot of LGBTQs who are coming out in their 40s and 50s. And they're facing, the trauma of what that's like after not admitting to being gay for 30, 40 years and growing up in the church. And now how do I face this? And how do I face my family? And how do I face my, others that I love? How do I tell anybody what I'm dealing with? So that's really traumatic. And it's important to have a safe space for folks to be and be able to experience and work through those issues on their own. Whatever whatever their final consequences, whatever their final conclusion is, we're just giving them that safe space.
Jay, I wonder if you could expand a little bit on the offerings that you have for clergy and clergy family.
Sure. It's one of the things we're very prideful about. I guess that's not a good thing to say on a Christian podcast, but we do try very hard to make ourselves present for clergy. We understand, we're clergy background. We have clergy on staff. I'm in the ordination process myself with the Methodist Church. And so it's a big issue for us. We understand that clergy and their families oftentimes feel isolated and have nowhere to go or nowhere to talk. And so we want to give clergy a safe place to come and be able to unload some of the things going on in their lives. And as a friend of mine told me one time, a pastor friend of mine told me one time, he's like, I can't talk, but just to so many people, because I have to be very cognizant of protecting my congregation. And I think that's really important to understand. And I think family members of the clergy are dealing with a lot of the same stressors. So there's a lot of stress, anxiety, a lot of depression. And so we have a very large number of clergy and staff members and family members who come to see us as well. And we're very hopeful about what we're able to do with those people. And we would love to, be more visible to the clergy in the Western Conference. And now that we're doing more virtual, we can see them all wherever they're sitting. So if anybody has any needs, feel free to give us a call and talk to us. We can talk to you about anything that is troubling you.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate that and that resource for our clergy folks and our ministry professionals as well. Jay, you mentioned the pandemic. I'm curious how COVID-19 has shifted your work as it has every other working industry right now.
I think we're working harder than ever. We had planned back last year about this time that we were going to start seeing a slowdown, that people were not going to keep coming. We made the decision to go completely virtual on March the 16th last year, and anticipated losing large numbers of clients who refused to be seen virtually. We were not really sure how the pandemic would affect people psychologically and emotionally. So we were preparing for things to really slow down significantly. Mm-hmm. I think about half of us saw a drop once we went virtual. I know I did. I saw a drop in client base shortly after, I think. So for part of March, part of April, we saw a drop. But in general, all of us have exceeded our numbers. And last year, 2020 was a milestone for Sanctuary. We saw more people. We had more hours last year than we have ever had. And it was pretty remarkable considering the situation we were under. We had new clients coming to us, people who were saying, I'm not adjusting to working at home with my spouse. Yeah. I'm not adjusting to being here with my kids all the time. We got a lot of folks who were college students who were going, hey, this is a challenge for me. I was expecting to be gone in a way. And here I am now. I'm back home. And, I'm really tired of dealing with the parental units. And how do I cope with this? Not to mention the anxiety of it. And then clients that we had, that we had moved on, that they had graduated, that they had said, hey, I'm good. And yet they were coming back, which I think speaks volumes for the work that we do. Yeah. And so the anxiety, the depression that it's brought up has really surfaced it brought up some major issues in some relationships. And so couples were calling us, and they continue to call us, going, help us navigate these waters. We decided in the summer last year that we were not going to just wait for people to call us. So we started producing our own materials relating to mental health around the pandemic. And so I'd encourage any of your listeners to go to our website. If you go to our perspective page, you will find articles on being a parent during the pandemic, helping your little children and their anxiety during the pandemic. You will see issues around helping and teaching during the pandemic, relationship issues. There's videos. We put out a lot of material so that our churches and all of the churches in our communities would have access to things they could refer their parishioners to and their communities to.
Great. That's great. Jay, can you tell us that web address, and then we'll also put it in the show notes for people to visit?
Yeah, it's sanctuarycounselinggroup.org, or you can shorthand it like me. It's scgnc.org. That's the abbreviation for Sanctuary Counseling Group North Carolina.org. And that's our website. We're also on Facebook and Instagram and all of social media, so you can check us out there as well. And we're constantly posting. I'm responsible for Facebook, which I find totally insane because I'm not doing a very good job. But we're posting new things. One of our even today we're posting stuff. This is Women's History Month, and so we're posting all sorts of issues around women and mental health that women are facing, and issues internationally that women are facing from a mental health perspective. We've got one of our staff members who is promoting videos that she's actually doing in conjunction with her site church. So we're really proud of being able to post those kinds of things. We also have a podcast section, so you can go check out our podcast and see some of the interviews we've done, everything on domestic violence to being a partner of an abuse survivor. So there's a lot of different stuff we're trying to get out to all of our churches and make it available to anybody who's interested in it.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a vast list of resources that are available for our folks here in the Western North Carolina Conference. So folks, visit their website and dig into those.
I would also say if anybody's got any interest or they have anything that they think is pertinent for us, whether it's addiction or whether it's something that's specific to their community they want us to address, let us know. Okay. They can email us at info@scgnc.org and let us know what they're interested in, and we'll be more than happy to work it into the schedule.
Great. We'll also make sure we put that email in the show notes for those that want to revisit that later. One of the things I was thinking about as you were talking, Jay, is that in the church, when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of scrambling to try to figure out how to do virtual church, and not just in the church, but everywhere has kind of had that that initial race to move virtually. But now it seems as though it's somewhat part of just normal life, and it seems like components of that are just they're gonna stay. So I wonder if you could tell a little bit about that transition for you guys, and if you think there's going to be any sort of change because of going completely virtual.
I think we are going to see a change. Going through graduate school, all of us have been taught, that we wanted to avoid the virtual. You needed to be together. You needed to see body language. You needed to have that face-to-face interaction to build the therapeutic alliance, which is so important to good therapy. And so we were apprehensive about it. And we were concerned as therapists about what that might mean for our clients. And we've had some therapists, we've had some clients who have been really concerned. finding privacy at home, especially during the pandemic, can be an interesting thing. And we've had we've done sessions with clients in very interesting places. I think I told you about, it wasn't one of my clients, but we did have one client who did therapy from her bathtub, and not like in her bathtub, but like she was sitting in her bathtub. It was the only place she could get privacy in her home. So all my men, except for maybe 2 or 3, do therapy from their car. Okay. And so they get in their car, they go drive around to a parking lot, get a good signal, and we do therapy from their car. Sometimes it's while they're driving, which is a little unnerving for me. But
I would imagine.
I did think, like I've got clients who drive an hour or more to see me, and I thought a lot of those folks may never come back to see me. I do believe it's become very normal now. Mm-hmm. We've become very good at now interpreting body language through virtual. We've become very good at listening more intently for tone and vocabulary than I think we were before, because we put a lot of emphasis on body language. I think there are still going to be some challenges, like couples therapy can be really hard online. Sure. I think I will be happy to get back in to a session with my couples, because it is really hard to do couples therapy virtually. But individual therapy, I think, goes very, very well. And I see us continuing to use that. But then, like I said, one of my clients who drives an hour to see me, I was very surprised the other day when he said, "Hey, I'm ready to come back. Yeah, I miss coming in. I need that sanctuary." And that was his words. And I'm not like using it as a marketing part. Yeah, sure. That was his word. He goes, "I need that sanctuary. I need to get away." So there is a part of being face-to-face, being together, that I think our clients really long for. Will we continue to do virtual? I think in some regard we will. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that it will change insurance carriers' positions, and it will change some of the laws. So right now there are a lot of restrictions, and insurance carriers have been gracious enough to continue to pay. Mm-hmm. Prior to the pandemic, they did not pay for virtual. Wow. Okay. That was something that did change with the pandemic. And we're hoping they will continue it on a long-term basis. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see how that happens. Some of the laws around licensing make it complicated, especially for an organization who sits right here on a state line. Mm-hmm. And so, they can come to see me in Charlotte, and I'm licensed, but yet if I do virtual with them across the state lines, it can be complicated. So I think there's going to have to be some changes made to make it seamless as we move forward. But I think we are going to see a change in the way therapy is done on a long-term basis.
Yeah, I think listening to you, it's interesting, and I would imagine that most places of work have adjusted through virtual and have learned some new things. But I found it really interesting that you're now using a little bit different techniques in your counseling. So I think that maybe one of the bright lights out of the pandemic is we're learning some new things that adds to our tool bag to be able to help others. I know I've had similar experience in my position here at the conference.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to look at it. I've even thought, like, you learn so much about where people choose to see you. You learn about, like, I've had clients who've taken me on tours of their home, and they thought that was important, uh-huh. And I think that says a lot about that relationship, and it says a lot about what that client needs. And I would never have gotten that. And so I could see us doing some sessions from home, just so you do get that kind of a insight. Are they always sitting at the kitchen table? Are they sitting in front of a blank wall? I mean, it gives you an insight to what's going on in their personal life. Is it chaos in the background, screaming and yelling, or, is it really peaceful and calm? I encourage my clients to call me from a place of peace and quiet, and a place where they can kind of recuperate a little bit, but
Sure.
that doesn't always happen. And, not only are there dogs and cats walking through, there's chickens and kids coming in, and mothers walking through. And it's been kind of interesting because there are some people who their families have become part of the family, and they'll walk through and they'll stick their face in the screen and go, "Hey, Jay, it's good to see you." And they'll just keep on walking. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I would never get that face to face.
That's what I was going to say. I imagine that's a new experience. Jay, one of the things I love about Sanctuary Counseling Group is your ministry model and how it's community-based. Could you talk to us a little bit about, maybe expand on that a little bit? And particularly, I know you're interested in going into some more marginalized communities. So if you could speak to that, I think our listeners.
Sure. Our mission is to be dedicated to the healing of the heart, mind, and spirit by providing excellent emotional, spiritual, and relational health care to all people of the Carolinas. And the way I've kind of interpreted that as the new executive director is to be community focused. And so we're in a diverse group of communities across the greater Charlotte area, and we want to be available to everyone in community. And so one of the big things that we do is we provide a sliding scale as well as a client assistance fund. And that's been a huge place that our churches and the conference and our districts have been helpful in maintaining relationships with us and making them a viable option for people in our communities. And so over a third of our hours go toward reduced fees, which means we're putting about $300,000 a year back into the communities in which we serve. So, we're giving $300,000 worth of mental health back into the communities we serve in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's a powerful statement for an organization. We do take insurance. We have 5 different carriers we work with. And then we love those full pay folks. We like people who pay cash because they make it possible for us to see people who cannot afford it. And our goal is that we don't want to ever turn anybody away. So we like to bring people in at whatever price point they can work with. I spoke to a young woman this morning who was looking for marriage therapy, and she says, "I can't find anybody who does evenings, and I can't find anybody who will take my insurance." And I said, "Well, we've got availability for evenings." I said, "Now, what's your insurance carrier?" And she told me, and I said, "Well, unfortunately, we don't take that insurance, but here's what we can do." Mm-hmm. I connected her with a therapist. They've already made an appointment, and they've already made arrangements for what the fee will be. And we put that with our therapist who's sitting in the community. They know those communities. And so we really count on them to be understanding of what the needs are and let them make the decisions. Who's got a need, what's their financial situation, and how can we help them?
Yeah. I love the client assistant program and the model that 100% of what's given to that goes directly into mental health services for those that can't afford it or may have some sort of factor that can't pay.
That's one of the things I think we're the most proud of. It really is a reason that we all are here at Sanctuary, that we chose to be at Sanctuary doing mental health. It's the reason we wanted to be doing something different than being at a different agency. We like that we can see people and we have those resources available. It can get a little dicey sometimes to make sure we have the funds, but we're constantly fundraising and trying to get resources And that's why our partnerships with our site churches have always been so important to us. And, I love that we can work with those who have virtually nothing, and we can help make mental health an option for them when other times it's not an option. Yeah. And it does all go to mental health. I mean, it doesn't pay the lights. It does not keep our lights on. It does not pay my salary. It pays for a mental health session for that client.
Yeah, I think that I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's really important for our listeners to understand. And if somebody out there is listening or somebody's out there listening, I'm sure Sanctuary would welcome your funding for their client assistance program.
Definitely. We will take donations any way you are willing to make them. So
I know that kind of the office is located in Charlotte, but your other places around the conference too. Can you share some of those places and maybe also some of the places you're hoping to expand into different types of communities?
Sure.
Maybe your vision about where you want to go.
We have offices from Hickory to Monroe over to Gastonia. So we have a very large triangle footprint. Hickory and High Point are empty right now. We're trying to fill those spaces. So if anybody knows a therapist that you think would be a good spiritual therapist, you might want to refer them to us. We are getting ready to open an office at Harrisburg UMC. That's been a tremendous opening for us. We're really looking forward to working with the Smiths who pastor that church. So that's going to be exciting for us. We'll start looking for someone to go in that place very soon as well. We have a Salisbury office. We have Davidson, Huntersville, University City. We are in Monroe, Gastonia, Belmont, South Charlotte, and then we have our Uptown office. So we have a fairly good sized footprint for where we're operating, and a few vacancies we're currently trying to fill. Our hopes are to go into the western part of the city and into the eastern part of the city. We believe, the board and I do, that we are missing some opportunities in some communities that really have need. And so we're looking at where can we expand into communities of color with more presence and having some more opportunities and hiring some folks that can go into those areas where mental health for most intents and purposes is forgotten or not even thought about. And so we're trying to change that stereotype of mental health in those communities. I think being present in those communities will really make a difference.
Jay, I know you have a bilingual counselor that is very good. I wonder if you could share a little bit about her.
Donna Macasso is a great addition to our staff. She was one of the first hires that I made when I came on as the executive director. We went in 2019. We went to begin looking at how do we diversify our staff more effectively, and hiring someone who was Spanish speaking was a major goal of the board's and mine. And so being able to have her on is really a plume in our hat that we're very happy to see. We're really thrilled to see how she's working with the immigrant populations in our area. And I think that's something that my management team and I are very strong about, really wanting to integrate her in more ways into the immigrant community in our churches. Right now, she sits in Huntersville and Davidson, and we know there's a large Hispanic-speaking population in that area. And so we're trying to connect her with all the churches in that area particularly. But in any of our locations where we come in contact with Hispanics who are really looking for a Spanish-speaking therapist, we are going to refer to her and give her that opportunity, because it does. There's some cultural issues, but the language differentiation can make a big difference for some people. So we're really proud to have her on and continuing to see what she's going to be able to do in the long run as we work to be ministering to that population.
Yeah. So, one thing I'd like to highlight is for our listeners that may have connections in East Charlotte or West Charlotte. I know you're looking for spaces to house your potential counselor. So, is there anything specific that you could say about that in terms of what your needs are and what you might be able to provide?
We're pretty flexible. We have everything from shared space where we share a space with other office mates from the church. There's a couple of places where we share common space. I think we use a parlor in one of our churches. They've designated that parlor to us during the week, except for a couple of evenings, I think. And most of our churches have found a designated office space for us. That would be our preference. Then we don't have to worry about juggling time and space. It gives us confidentiality. We can deal with some confidentiality issues around it. We can make it our own and make it work better for our clients who are coming and going. We really work hard to understand what the church is trying to achieve from a perspective of operations. We try to work with them and let them understand how we operate, when people would be coming, when we might not be there. So we're trying to work. I think the Harrisburg site will be a shared space, and we've had to work out, okay, how will we facilitate that? And they've said, here's the blocks where we need it, and can you work around that? And we're like, sure, we can work around that. So every church is different. We look for a church that's willing to partner with us. We want a church that from the top down, this is something that's just kind of becomes ingrained in them, that mental health is a big issue in their community. And they really want someone present locally to be a part of their ministry in their church. And so that means, the church that I sit in has been very gracious about office opportunities, letting me use their printers and making sure I have that internet access. We're looking for churches who are kind of looking for opportunities to kind of get us engaged and being able to say, this is a new ministry for us. How else can we use this expertise that we're bringing in now? So it's more about the partnership than it really is about the space. We can make the space work. Mm-hmm. There are some things we like to look for, easy in and out, those kinds of things. But I think since I stopped working late evenings when I took the executive director job, I don't think we have anybody else working like until 11 o'clock at night. So churches nobody's having to worry about that anymore.
Hey, Jay, I really appreciate you being on today and giving our listeners a chance to learn more about Sanctuary Counseling Group. Again, we'll put your contact information in the website in the show notes so people can refer to them. And we look forward to learning more about what you guys are doing and how you're serving our communities.
Well, I appreciate you letting us be here. Thanks so much. And if there's anything that we can do, if there's a topic that comes up that you would like for us to explore on a deeper basis, then let us know. We'd be more than happy to come back, whether it's me or one of my staff members.
Great. Thanks so much, Jay.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to Means of Grace, a podcast produced by the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church. We hope you enjoy listening to these podcasts and use them as a way to stay connected to our community. Remember to subscribe to Means of Grace for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us an honest rating and a review. It helps others find this podcast. Follow the WNCC on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WNCCUMC. Once again, that's at WNCC UMC. Means of Grace is produced by the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church and Andy Go of Gojo Studios.